cr101radio.com, podcasts, and more. Welcome back to another episode of Preschool Pioneers. I am your host, Jeremy Walker. You can follow us on our parent network, CR101 Radio, on social media such as Facebook, Twitter, Gab, and YouTube. And you can subscribe to this podcast on your preferred platform so you never miss an episode. Visit cr101radio.com for these links. Well, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Preschool Pioneers. This episode is entitled, W is for Whiteness, the importance of teaching children the spiritual war that is going on in the world, and how to recognize what side they are on. Well, this has got to be one of the more interesting topics I've touched on, because it has far-reaching political standards and presuppositions and hatreds and bias and all kinds of other craziness associated with these subjects. Why? Because people don't really say what they mean. That's right. The communists used to call people that were on their side temporarily useful idiots, and they would use people to be on their side, to act like they were their friends for a short while. And then after the useful idiots helped them destroy an enemy, the useful idiots then got turned on and they became the enemy next. Because the communists who had political means to put down their fellow man and have domination over them would lie and obscure their real goals. And that is what's happening in America today. And that's what this podcast is all about. Christian parents and Christian teachers, and why, oh why, it's so important that Christians become teachers. Now, I'm going to be quoting directly from a college website. They are the ones who are teaching and promoting the concept of what they call, quote unquote, whiteness. And I want to set the stage because if you're going to properly understand, you're going to have to be able to see through the water clearly and without, of course, a dirty obscuring of the water so you can't see the bottom. You want to be able to see the dirty bottom of these ideas because your children need to be able to see it as well. If not, they might accidentally waste their time arguing over obscurities and not getting to the root problem that's going on in the world. Or, worst case scenario, what's happening to most students today in America, they are becoming the useful idiots around the world. And they are being used for evil means, thinking that they are doing some form of good for a certain cause that they might be for, to right a potential injustice that they think that they are fighting against. So let's jump into the concept. What kind of spiritual war is going on in America? And I say spiritual because it's not a physical war. It's not about the countries that are at war, where we have these made-up landmarks, your country versus my country. There's not a cultural war, perhaps, going on that's from these countries, like Irish culture, African culture, or American culture. That's not it either. And neither is it a racial war, where it is your skin color versus my skin color. None of these are the spiritual battle in the world, and it never has been. Anybody who tells you otherwise is selling you something, and selling your children something. Watch out. You might be a useful idiot. So let me help you out here. The spiritual war that you as a parent and specifically as a teacher need to teach children, it is God versus man. End of story. Good versus evil. It's a really simple battle to understand. Who is going to rule the world? Who is going to have dominion? Whose law? is going to be wrapped around the world and control everything? Is it going to be God, or is it going to be man? This is the spiritual war going on in the world. To understand this a little bit more brightly, we teach Bible time at the preschool that I'm at and all the preschools here in Southwest Florida that I'm associated with. And we teach all the time at the beginning of the school year the creation story. With every new school year, we start there. It sets the foundation for education. Where did you come from? And so we always teach from Genesis 1 on the first week of school. And it goes into the first children. Of course, it goes into the fall, why the world is the way that it is, why is it that man is at war with God, why is man living in a curse and under a curse, and why is mankind at war with mankind, and of course, ultimately with God. But we can go all the way back to the very first child ever born, Cain, and his brother Abel. And we all know the story. They were the same. They had the same parentage. They had the same nature. They're both fallen creatures, just like us. So they sinned. The difference was when God told them how to be right with him, Abel listened and was then seen as righteous by God, had his favor, and Cain did not. Abel rightly saw the problem as himself, and that's exactly what God told him. Your problem is your sin. Where Cain, however, he saw his problem outside of himself because, of course, he was good. He wasn't broken. He wasn't bad. He wasn't a person who was at war with God. It was God who was at war with him. And, of course, since his brother was favored, he hated his brother. And, of course, as we all know the story, he killed him. He did not kill him because of his nationality. He did not kill him because of his parentage, because of his skin color, any of the things that I mentioned earlier. This is not why men hate men. Why people hate each other is based on their association with God. That's right, their association with God. Now, don't get me wrong, evil men will also hate evil men, and they will murder each other, which they do all the time. Open up the news, and you'll see it. But primarily, even evil people can get together to fight against God's people and God himself. That's why they tried to make the Tower of Babel, the United Nations, you name it, that's what it's all about. So it is a spiritual war, not one about skin color. And on top of that, the ridiculous nature to argue over skin color. We all came from the same family. I recently heard some people who were getting excited about how they could see that they were related to certain notable historical figures down through the ages. Well, the funny thing is, we all are. We are all related to every single human on the planet at some point down through history. We are all interrelated at some point. All of us. We all come from the same family. We all come from the same curse. And the only thing that separates us is like Cain and Abel. What side spiritually are you on? Are you with God or are you against him? And when you teach your children that, they can start to see through the fog of all the craziness and all the verbiage and all the manipulations of words and subject matters that come out. And whenever somebody says, this is the problem with the world today, your child can stop and say, well, no, it's not. Our problem, no doubt, is sin. My problem is me. Your problem is you. I can't hurt you or kill you, and my problems go away. Cain's problems did not cease to exist when he murdered his brother. And no person getting rid of another person, another nation, another culture, another racial ethnicity, none of that is going to change the problem in the world. No amount of murder will change your nature. That's right. It won't change it. And your problem, no doubt, is you. That's the spiritual war. You're on the side of God or you're on the side of Satan. End of story. Two families, spiritual families, to be associated with. So the question is, which one are you on? And better yet, teaching your children to identify which one they're on. It's not based on who their mama is or their daddy is, where they live, what languages they speak, or what color their skin is. None of that matters. What matters is your relationship with God, and then your dedication, either to be with God and obey Him, or to be at war with God and to try to destroy everything associated with God, and that includes your fellow man. But let's jump into, because I want to spend most of my time focused on this and showing the lies so that we do not become those, of course, useful idiots to evil men. We need to have good doctrine to be able to see the counterfeit. I saw a guy one time talking about funny money, counterfeit dollar bills. He goes, we don't study all the counterfeits, but we do as we study the real thing. And then when you study the real thing and know what it looks like, you can spot a counterfeit no matter how it's made. And that is your goal as a Christian parent, as a Christian teacher. Help your children know the standard, God's law, the Word of God, the truth of God, the wisdom of God. And then they'll be able to spot the counterfeits no matter what shape, color, size, or flavor they come in. But here we go. On this website, college website, it had the comment at the top, white versus whiteness. This was the description, the differentiation between white and whiteness, two different subjects. Okay, first, white. As a term describing people, refers to light-skinned people, quote unquote, of European descent. This is, of course, in opposition to the concept of dark-skinned people of non-European descent. Like somehow there aren't dark-skinned people in Europe or never were. Anyways, moving on. The next concept is whiteness, which refers to the construction of the white race and white culture and the system of privileges and advantages afforded to white people in the U.S. and across the globe through government policies, media portrayals, decision-making power within corporation schools and the judicial systems, etc. So here is what they're selling. They're trying to say whiteness is not the same as being white. A light-skinned person, they can call a white person. Now, there aren't any white people unless you're an albino and have a pigment malfunction in your body. Otherwise, we're all people of color. Everybody is. I myself, I go out in the sun and I tan. The funny thing is that I would be, and I am on my driver's license, labeled a white male. However, for me, I have a descendancy and ancestry from all over the place. In fact, most Americans do. Our ancestry is not a single line. We branch out. We're from all kinds of places all over the place. In fact, my personal ancestry has a whole lot of Indian. So whenever somebody says we need to give back the lands to the Indian peoples, well, you should put me in that line. Yeah, you might look at my skin a little bit, but that doesn't mean that's all that is there to me, nor anybody else. That's why this racial stuff is so psychotically stupid. Never fall into the category of loving or hating something based on what your eyes tell you. That's right. That is a false ability to form connections with peoples, to love and hate something based on what it looks like. A lot of things that look really good are horrible, and a lot of things that you might think are not very pleasing to the eye might be the best thing in the world. But there is a difference in liking and disliking as far as personal ideas, like do you like strawberry, chocolate, vanilla, or cosmopolitan? And so there are a lot of ideas out there for personal preferences and who people hang out with. And there's a lot to say with the old saying, birds of a feather flock together. People of similar likes will flock together. That means, generally speaking, people that are considered black will hang out, generally speaking, with people that are considered black. Or whites with whites, Asians with Asians, Hispanics with Hispanics. But also then it goes beyond all that. It goes into cultural ideas as well. Where are you from? Are you from the South? Are you from Pittsburgh? Are you from California? What languages do you speak? That's probably the biggest one. People that speak the same language, those people flock together faster than any other connection in human history. If you've traveled at any point in time, if they meet somebody that speaks the same language, it does not matter the color of their skin. It does not matter the culture. All that matters is I can talk to you, and you can talk to me, so automatically, boom, we have the biggest connection of mankind on the planet. In fact, that's what brought mankind together in the first place. Tower of Babel. Every person on earth was of one language. Lots of variations, but they all worked together. Why? They could speak the same language. We could all work together. Languages split up. Everybody went on off their way. Now there's prejudices on every side. And you know why people make prejudices? Because of sin. It's that simple. What's the solution to prejudice on every level, including racial? Christianity. It teaches you to love the other person as yourself. Full stop. That's the way it works in Christianity. That's the way God's justice system works. And that's why, of course, mankind hates God's justice system. It does not want you to see the other person and treat them like yourself. The golden rule of sorts. They hate that. Man pushes hate. That's why your children will be taught systematic racism and hatred of people on all levels. It doesn't matter if it's a flag, we're supposed to hate Russia and love Ukraine, or whatever it is that you're supposed to love and hate. Every person is going to be pushing some form of segregation, some form of separation, but never Christianity. Because Christianity tells us to look beyond all that and to look to the heart of the matter. Are these evil people or godly people? And this is where we draw our line. And that's as Christians where we teach them to draw the line. Not on skin color. But let's go on, because they say whiteness is about the culture. It's about the laws. And so this is really talking about the Christian-influenced society. That's right, the Christian-influenced society. In the recent years, the white man, quote unquote, spread and colonized throughout the West and all across Africa. And with that, he brought his religious faith, Christianity, and it civilized all the world. You could see whenever the English were in, for example, Haiti, the place was clean, people were all dressed up, the streets were looking nice. And now that that's all gotten pushed out, Haiti, of course, is a terrible third world country level now again. Back when there was a more Christian influence throughout the England and America, the streets were cleaner, the people were healthier, everything was better, less crime everywhere. And now that it's being pushed out, it's all going their opposite direction. They're trying to expel Christianity's influence, and they're trying to call it whiteness. And that's why they're saying it's not a race of people. Whiteness doesn't come from the white man. They know that. And that's why they said it's all across the globe. It's in government policies. It's in how media portrays people. Because in a Christian culture, a person who is not Christian will be portrayed as the bad guy. This is a reason why all of a sudden, all of our children's stories, now we're seeing the villains. The villains are coming out as being misunderstood. We had Transylvania, Hotel Transylvania, where all the bad guys that used to be the monsters of the previous centuries, Dracula, the Mummy, the Wolfman, all those guys, now they're seen as lovable and all kind-hearted. All the media for our children is being flipped around as if we don't somehow understand it. Zombie movies are about killer dead people, and now they're about high schoolers who are zombies who can dance and sing together instead. They're really just lovable people. And you're starting to see this trend of misunderstanding, not ostracizing people based on their conduct, because we're all really just good people. Well, no, we're not. God divides the line, good versus evil. And what they hate is whiteness being the light. Not a big shock to call them light-skinned people, the light versus the dark. And this is the real concept. Are you a person of the light or a person of the dark? They're putting this into their language, but being a little bit more careful about the concept. These are the only two sides you're on, and it goes along with everything I've already said. You're on the side of light or you're on the side of dark. And they hate the fact that the side of light, Christian, has influenced the cultures. It's influenced government policies. It's influenced how media portrays people, good versus evil, decision-making. Who do we bless? Who do we punish? Good-working, hard-working people get elevated. People who are lazy don't get paid, shouldn't even eat. The school system, how the children are taught. Are they taught Christian values or non-Christian values? The judicial system. Who are the criminals in our society? Those people who break God's law or those people who keep God's law? If you start to see the balances in America today, the law-abiding people, the good people, the godly folk, those are the ones that are being prosecuted, and the criminals are being released and revered. It's because they hate this idea of Christianity in the culture. Now, let's go ahead and read through the rest of this just real quick, and we'll touch some more stuff, but this is the crux to this concept. It says here, a What is whiteness? A socially and politically constructed behavior. Okay, so from the top, socially and politically constructed behavior. It's not about skin color. It never was. So when they're saying white people and whiteness, they're not talking about a racial identity. They're talking about a social and political structure based on a religious foundation, Christian or not. Whiteness has a long history in European imperialism. It does not simply refer to a skin color, but an ideology based on beliefs, values, behaviors, habits, and attitudes, which result in the unequal distribution of power and privilege in a culture. Whiteness represents a position of power where the power holder defines social categories and reality. Once again, from their own stuff, it's the same thing I'm saying. It's not about skin color. It never was. They use it to fog the waters. It is about your religious foundations, like they're saying here. Critical White Studies defines whiteness as a broad social construction that embraces white culture, history, ideology, racialization, expressions and economic experiences, and emotions and behaviors, and nonetheless it reaps material, political, and economic and structural benefits from those socially deemed white. Socially deemed white. So you can become white or not white based on how you act. That's right, how you act. Let's keep going. These material benefits are occurred at the expense of the people of colors, what they have on here, the people that are dark-skinned, the people of the dark, namely in how people of color are systematically and prejudicially denied equal access to those material benefits. Short put, people that break God's commandments are not considered white. People that keep God's commandments, those are the white ones, the light versus the dark. And here it's saying those people who are breaking God's commandments are denied access to benefits. Well, yeah, economic benefits. When you don't keep God's commandments, bad things happen. Let's continue. Whiteness as an ideology derives from the historical practice of institutionalizing white supremacy, beginning at the least the 17th century, or legal terms and all the rest. Eventually, it was used widely to decide who could vote or be enslaved or be a citizen, who could attend certain schools and churches, who could marry whom, and who could even drink from water fountains. These and thousands of other legal and social regulations were built upon the fiction of a superior, quote-unquote, white race deserving special privileges and protections. Notice here, they keep shifting the language. Continuing, quote-unquote, becoming white meant gaining access to a whole set of public and private privileges that materially and permanently guaranteed basic sustenance needs and therefore survival. So if you wanted to become white, you could then prosper. In other words, if you kept God's commandments, you were a law-abiding person, you got all the things that you needed to survive. And if you don't, you are hindered to the point that you are going to be oppressed. Yes, that's exactly right. The criminal is oppressed and pushed out of society. And let's end it here. Toni Morrison has used the following metaphor to describe the invisibility of whiteness. Quote, it is like the fishbowl that contains both fish and water. Whiteness, in other words, provides the very context for meaning-making. It supplies the norms and categories against which all groups are measured. But the categories of whiteness are invisible as a constraint because we keep focusing on what is inside them, the water and the fish, rather than the fishbowl itself, unquote. In other words, what this is saying is that there is an invisible barrier outside that is used to come up with the context of meaning-making, where everything inside the fishbowl is then identified with, i.e., God's commandments are used to define society, who should be promoted and who should be suppressed. And yes, we suppress evil. In an ungodly society, it wants the fishbowl to be contained by evil, defined by evil, and everything inside to be rewarded based on its promotion of evil, not of godliness. See, your children need to understand this language, like I've just quoted here, and the war that's going on. It is not a racial war. They should stop talking and thinking along these lines. That's what brainwashing is all about. Brainwashing is whenever you try to tell somebody and confine their thinking to a certain way. We need to give children a Christian foundation for knowledge and education and truth, and they will be able to see through the fog and live a blessed life and not become useful idiots by evil people. Well, this is Jeremy Walker for Preschool Pioneers. I hope this episode has given you something to think about and to help you and your family. Thank you for joining me, and God bless.